Welcome to Making Change Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we are talking with Britepaths. It's a special night for Britepaths tonight because we are hosting our second annual Give Instead Gala. And what it is an online gala where no one actually shows up to a specific place. So what we are doing instead is doing this radio show. Joining me is the Executive Director, Lisa Whetzel, and the President of the Board of Directors, May Shallal. Thank you both so much for being here instead.
Great to be here.
Thank you for having us.
So people may recognize Britepaths. We were awarded, and I should, full disclosure, I've been on the board for I think 8 years on the Board of Directors. And people who know us are familiar with Britepaths, but for people who don't know us, Lisa, give us a little bit of background about how a 35-year-old organization did not always exist as Britepaths. You know, we have a long history, but it's been quite a journey.
It has. I've been with the organization going on 15 years, and we started out in the Fairfax-Vienna area as an interfaith effort to feed the homeless, and over the course of 10 years, we sort of evolved into providing assistance for working families that are struggling in the community, in the Fairfax County area primarily. And so over the course of 35 years, our programming has evolved quite a bit. So we are now really focusing on making sure those families can be self-sufficient. And we do that in a number of ways. So we provide programs that stabilize families that are in crisis through food assistance and financial assistance. And then we help them build resilience. And the programs under building resilience include helping people to better manage the money that they have, even if it's on a limited income, and also workforce development. And then we've got a whole host of programs that are involved with financial literacy that we can go into maybe in just a little bit. But then we also have supports for children, and we do that in a number of ways. Holiday assistance, school supplies in the fall, and then also weekend food packs for students that are in need.
And those are not things that people always see. Things like the weekend food packs. You know, a lot of people know us as being involved with food, right? Because that's how we started out. And so, and people come to us in crisis mode. Obviously, there's a lot of food insecurity in Fairfax County, more than people realize. Many people go hungry in this county, as affluent as it is. And so people originally were referred to us, and it was about being in a food crisis.
Right.
You know, and very quickly we realized the doorway may have been food insecurity, but what we really determined is that the only way to get people to self-sufficiency was to help them build a whole different skill set.
Right. Because, I mean, food assistance and financial assistance is critical, but, you know, people can be in chronic need for a lifetime. And what we're trying to do is move people out of poverty and out of that cycle, and giving them the skills and the confidence to pursue, a higher paying job will help them be self-sufficient in the long term.
Absolutely.
And, one of the things that we found that you might find interesting is that a study that was done on brain science demonstrated the impact of chronic stress and how it negatively impacts one's executive functioning skills. And chronic stress is described as long-term stress. It's not like the stress that you and I might have where, the car breaks down and we're late for a meeting and we're frustrated about that. But the kind of stress that I'm talking about is the stress that for years, people are living paycheck to paycheck and don't know if they can pay the next month's rent. And that really does a number on your ability to make long-term decisions, and also making decisions that are, just more objective. And the programs that we offer help people to think longer term and take shorter steps towards goals, and they feel like they gain momentum and confidence that they can manage things on their own.
So, what pops into my head is Maslow's hierarchy of need. And so when people are in survival mode, they can never get beyond just trying to survive.
Right.
To what you're talking about is executive function, which is building skills that get them to the top of the pyramid.
Right.
If you're always stuck in survive, 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 it is hard to ever break out of that and get somewhere else.
Right, and especially if you are growing up in poverty and your parents have grown up in poverty. I mean, it just is, it really, it's hard to get out of that cycle. And, so that's what we're trying to do.
So, May, you have recently taken over as president of the board of directors.
That's right.
And as I said, I've been on the board for 8 years. We've experienced a lot of change in 8 years, a lot of growth. And I just want you to talk a little bit about what the board's role is and some of the people on the board and some of the really important functions that the board plays in helping Britepaths to reach its goals.
Well, the beauty of Britepaths, and particularly under the leadership of Lisa, is that they have the model down, and it's moving along, and it's growing by leaps and bounds, and it really has for quite a while. So the board that we have now is much more of a strategic and visionary board. We're sort of more of the sounding board for the organization. We don't need to be hands-on. We don't need to be part of the minutia, but because the staff is really so skilled at what they do. We have a very diverse board. We have a number of unique perspectives on the board. We've got people from the banking industry. We've got people with advertising backgrounds. We've got people with fundraising backgrounds who work for other nonprofits and have sought out board positions with Britepaths. And we have attorneys. We have quite the skill set. Everybody brings their own individual skill set. And
Catherine, I mean, right. And your social media guru skills.
Well, that's true, and that's how I ended up coming to Britepaths
Right.
was through social media. And Karin, has done a lot of community outreach when Mary LaRoe was on the board. I mean, we ended up with, and we really truly sought out people who had lots of different perspectives and relationships and skills in the community. And, we continue because there are term limits on our board. And let me just say, I believe in term limits on a board. As much as I would love to stay with Britepaths forever, people need to roll off the board.
Right. You
And
need fresh ideas.
You need fresh ideas and people with fresh energy, too. But I will say this about the board culture from my perspective is that I frequently like to say, I just love us.
Oh.
Because when we bring new people on, I think people really feel a sense of community and teamwork on the board, which is to say, we can have conversations where people disagree, but it's a safe place. Yeah, it's a safe place to say, I don't agree. And we can do it respectfully, and people can vote their conscience or whatever and be in a minority, maybe even a minority of one. But to me, that's a great board culture when people really feel like they can have an honest dialogue.
Right, and it's problem solving.
Yes, definitely. So for those of you just joining us, this is Making Change Radio. We are talking about Britepaths tonight, and joining me is the Executive Director, Lisa Whetzel, and the President of the Board of Directors, May Shallal. So May, going forward, there's a lot of things when we talk about being a visionary board, there's a lot of things that are brought to Britepaths that we're asked to consider. And, one of the things every organization has to consider is mission creep. Is it in our wheelhouse? Is this something is part of our mission? Will it help the clients that we serve? And, talk a little bit about, how sometimes we end up with an embarrassment of people saying, can you do this?
Right. Well, of course, that's part of we could agree to disagree on certain things. There have been some issues that have been brought to the board that we decided we're not quite ready to tackle those things yet. Not that they're bad ideas, but we want to be really good at what we're doing, and we want to really be focused on our mission. And one of the things that that drew me to this organization was the idea of bringing in having a sense of community, and having a sense of you're not just giving someone a fish, but you really are teaching them how to fish. And I think that is what cultivates that sustainability for families. That is what takes them to the next level. It's not about a handout, it's about a hand up. And so we are trying to take the board and the organization in that direction, in the direction of anything that is going to support that mission, and that is going to take us further in that mission, without getting into too many controversial areas, without getting into too many political arenas. Helping the community is something that everybody can get behind, and it doesn't matter what color you are, what political sense you have, what affiliations you have, whether you're rich, poor, or otherwise. It's something that everyone can get behind. So to that end, I think everybody who is on the board brings their own unique perspective, but somehow it's so far it's been a pretty cohesive board. And as you said, we can agree to disagree. We can disagree respectfully, but everybody's opinion is taken. I think everybody's opinion is heard. This is. I'm going on my third year with Britepaths, starting my third year with Britepaths, and that's also one of the things that drew me to this organization was how the board is cohesive and how they work together. And when Dave Sands was at the helm, he did a great job of making sure that everyone was heard, and also being able to put limits on where we were going and what we were going to be talking about.
And that's a great leadership quality. It really is, knowing that just because we could do it doesn't mean we should do it. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit, too, about the boards helping to bring the organization itself from a perspective of the staff. Most people think of nonprofits as like serving our clients, which we do, but we also have a growing staff. And oftentimes, nonprofits find themselves in a position of not even paying their own people a living wage and putting their staff in a position of counseling people to get better jobs that make a living wage. And nonprofits historically do not pay their people well or provide benefits, mainly because of this overhead admin specter, which hangs over every nonprofit. Is like, you're supposed to deliver quality services, you're supposed to hire and retain the best people, but you're not supposed to pay them any money because all the donor dollars are supposed to go directly to client services. And this is kind of an impossible conundrum to actually do that. And so I think in the time that I've been at the board, we've also worked very hard to make sure that while our staff is busy counseling other people, how to live sustainably on their income, that we are not putting our own staff in a position where it's impossible for them to do that.
Right. Well, one of the things that we've been able to do recently is offer health insurance to our staff, and that's huge for a nonprofit, particularly. The other thing that we have learned is overhead is not a bad word. I know that it has a stigma attached to it, but really, in order to, as you said, hire and keep the best people who are going to be able to take your organization to the next level, and thereby helping to serve the community that you're trying to serve and the stakeholders that you are trying to reach out to, you do have to pay a living wage, and you do have to pay people appropriately to their skill set.
And offer benefits, which any employee expects. And yet, Dan Pallotta is really been at the forefront of saying that nonprofits are getting it wrong when we play into this idea that overhead needs to be really low because donors expect overhead to be really low. But who's delivering the services?
Right. I mean, you wouldn't expect any business to, they would want to be able to pay for quality staff. and to run the business like, as a professional business. I think another angle to look at this is that I think it's really important to recognize that we want to make sure that our staff looks like the people that we serve. And so if we're a bunch of white women, what is that saying?
It says that only spouses of people who have health insurance and benefits can work there.
Right. And so we made a concerted effort a couple of years ago to say we want to diversify our staff and our board even. And so we purposefully went out and sought board members, to increase that diversity. And I think we've been very successful at that. But then to attract people to even apply for the jobs that we have, we had to offer full-time work. We had to offer better pay, and since we started doing that, it's worked, and it's great because I think it's just really important to bring in different perspectives. And I think it just makes the organization richer, if you will.
Well, and I think Dan Pallotta also talks about the kind of weird religiosity of this perspective we have about nonprofits, that people do it because we're just, we do it out of the goodness of our heart. We do it because we're so altruistic. But you still have a mortgage to pay. People still have kids to put through college, whether you're doing, good work in the community or not. Everybody has bills to pay. And so I think this will continue to be an enormous impediment, especially in Northern Virginia, where the cost of living is high, where unemployment is low, and there is a real competition for talented people. I think, and there is a big nonprofit industrial complex in the greater Washington, D.C. area. But to your point, people who are single, I got 3 kids who are single. My daughter worked for a nonprofit and then moved to Richmond because you can't work for a nonprofit, be single, and live here. Bottom line, you can't. And so I want our listeners to understand when they think about nonprofits and they think about where they give their money, and when they look at the catalog of philanthropy, by the way, we're there, Britepaths is there, that they can't keep looking at this number and say that high overhead means that their donor dollars are being wasted, because it's not.
Right.
Quality organizations deliver quality services to the community, to individuals that make a difference in their lives.
And make a real impact, right?
It totally does. And so I do want our listeners to remember that. You need to adjust your perspective on how you are looking at the financials of nonprofits. And again, this goes back to our board, and walking this fine line between what our financials look like, to the community, and wanting to hire and retain the best possible people.
Right. And, we also want to be able to pay insurance to cover liability for all of our volunteers. And we want to be able to, keep the lights on. We want to be able to have computer equipment that's of quality, that's not always breaking down. It's all of that kind of stuff costs money, but it helps us to work more efficiently and spend more time with clients.
So, and the thing about having a really credible organization, and we have been fortunate because you have many long-term staff members who've been you've been with the organization 15 years. Chris Garris has been there.
At least 12.
12. I mean, many people.
13.
Right. And so, I think we have to understand that in order for those people to keep doing the work they're doing, they have to have the resources necessary to make a difference. For those of you just joining us, this is Radio Fairfax, and this is Making Change Radio. And the change makers we are talking with tonight are from Britepaths. That's Lisa Whetzel, who's the executive director, and May Shallal, who is the president of the board of directors. So we had an opportunity, and I am your host, Catherine Reed. So we had an opportunity recently to work in partnership with United Way, and that this is a big program, and I know that we'll really kind of want to drill down on that. But from a board perspective, I just want to talk a little bit with May about the fact that United Way came to us and asked us to partner with them. They could have chosen much bigger organizations. There are numerous nonprofits bigger than we are, who have track records and more staff, but they didn't. United Way came to us, and I think that has to do a lot with the reputation and the credibility that we have established, even though we're small.
And that speaks to Lisa and the staff. I mean, that they have done phenomenal work, and they were recently chosen as the nonprofit of the year
By the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, right? That's right. Yeah, I know. And that's very competitive as well. There's a lot of nonprofits and we were nominated a couple of times before we actually won it.
Yeah, it was quite an honor. I mean, considering the pool of quality nonprofits in the area, it was quite an honor.
Absolutely. And so United Way came, and they basically wanted us to do something we had not done before. So give us kind of an overview. There's a lot of programs that I want to talk about, and we have a lot of time to talk about the programs. But I just kind of want to tie together what we're talking about as far as our staff, our credibility, investing in our people, investing in our organization, and having a partner like United Way come and ask us to do this specific program.
Right. Yeah. So we had a really strong track record of providing financial literacy programming. So that involves teaching classes, providing 6-month-long periods for mentoring. And then we have financial counseling clinics that we offer once a month in 2 different parts of the county. One's in Chantilly, the other's in Alexandria. And so they knew that we were already doing it. And the United Way had worked with Fairfax County to establish a site at the South County Government Center building. And so we took up some office space there, and it co-locates with Fairfax Access, which is a place where anybody in the community can go and access a computer, look for jobs, and do whatever. And so we get foot traffic because of that location. But we've been able to pull together all sorts of partners, financial institutions, other nonprofits that deliver classes such as couples counseling, financial counseling, and that's been just fantastic. So we are serving about 2,000 people every year, and we are always looking for volunteers that can come and help just staff the reception desk, but also to help make the follow-up phone calls. And by follow-up phone calls, we track people. We give them a financial habits survey right when the very first time they get a service from us, either a class or financial coaching. And then we follow up with them again at 3 months, and then at 9 months, and then at a year, and we're going on the 2-year cycle because we want to see that the kind of the coaching and the help that we're giving them is actually making a difference. And so that's been really fascinating to see how that's going. And so, one of the metrics that we're trying to use is credit scores, increasing credit scores, because that's really a universal measure for financial stability. And so it's really exciting to see that change.
Right. And so United Way had this vision of having a financial empowerment center, and it's in the South County Government Center. And as you said, people come through there for a variety of reasons, including the computers, but just a lot of other services are obtained at the South County Government Center.
Right. And so we're able to bring in, other groups that provide guidance for starting up your own business or understanding how to prepare your taxes, but year round and not just during tax season. And so that's really helpful for people that are in some sort of situation and they want to be able to fix it. But what we are trying to do is just be a credible source for reliable information and be a welcoming place where you don't have to have a lot of money to take advantage of the services that we're offering, and it's for everyone. And there's we give orientation to our volunteers, talking about the fact that they need to make sure that they're not judging and that they are just providing guidance, and to be sensitive to the fact that people are have experienced situations that, sometimes they don't have any control over what's happened to them. So for example, like if their child gets sick, and they have to take care of their child, and they have decreased hours, they don't get benefits, so they can't take paid family leave, and they spiral downward. And so during the shutdown, the government shutdown back in January, we had people coming to us because they were afraid they weren't going to make rent, and could we offer advice? And so we were able to provide credible counseling and help people to talk to their billing vendors, utility companies, and explain what their situation is so that they could maybe get a little leeway.
And I think you really touched on something important, which is teaching people to advocate for themselves.
Exactly.
We do not make those phone calls. We
Right.
will help them. We will sit with them. A volunteer will, and they make that phone call, and they negotiate, and they advocate for themselves.
Right.
This is teaching people how to build muscle, and they only build the muscle when they do it themselves.
And then they're surprised and when the vendor says, okay, well, we'll make this repayment plan for you, and they feel empowered and like, I didn't know I could do that.
Right. And once you've done it for yourself once, then you can do it again.
Right.
After the break, we will be talking with Britepaths, so please stay with us.
Radio Fairfax. What you want to hear, where you want to hear it.
Hi, I'm Marianne Metz from The Melody Lingers On Radio Fairfax. Join me in exploring and enjoying the Great American Songbook. We bring back the wonderful voices of Rosemary Clooney, Bing Crosby, Ella Fitzgerald, Judy Garland, and Frank Sinatra, just to name a few. And we hear some who are still singing for us today. So come listen as the melody lingers on.
The Melody Lingers On every Wednesday at 11 a.m. only on Radio Fairfax.
Join Mike Delaney Wednesday evenings at 9 for a weekly meeting with the chairman of the board, a true American Idol, Mr. Francis Albert Sinatra. That's Simply Sinatra, Wednesday nights at 9 only on Radio Fairfax.
Tune in to the music that has shaped America's most dynamic art form called jazz. Join me, Robin Clemens, on Jazz at Club Paradise on Saturdays from 12 to 1 Eastern Standard Time. Listen in and hear recordings from the legendary masters of jazz and releases from young players who are taking the music forward. Join me, Robin Clemens, Jazz at Club Paradise on Saturdays from 12 to 1 Eastern Standard Time on Radio Fairfax.
Welcome to Isla Earth. To the world at large, global warming is anything but a game. But if you happen to be on the internet, it can be. That's where you'll find a game called
19 people.
Produced by the BBC, it lets you be president of the European nations. Your job as Prez is to pass environmental laws and react to crises caused by climate change, all the while.
The Gift of Life, matchingdonors.com.
An important message from Medicare.
When my son first told me about extra help from Medicare, I said, thanks, but no thanks. I didn't want any help paying for my prescriptions. I told him, I don't have much money coming in, but I still have my pride. Besides, I looked into it a couple years ago. I figured if I didn't qualify then, I wouldn't qualify now either. My, oh my, am I ever glad my son didn't give up on me. He reminded me that I was on a limited income and that it was easier than ever for people like me to qualify. So, I called, and he was right. Now I pay just a few dollars for generics and a few dollars more for brand name prescriptions. With extra help, I can afford the prescriptions I need. Thanks, Medicare.
Get the extra help you need to stay healthy. Visit socialsecurity.gov or call 1-800-772-1213.
Radio Fairfax is a 501c3 nonprofit based in Fairfax, Virginia.
Welcome back to Making Change Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we're talking with Britepaths, and it's a very important evening at Britepaths because we are actually hosting a gala called Give Instead, and what the executive director, Lisa Whetzel, and I are doing, instead of actually attending a gala in uncomfortable heels, eating rubber chicken in a hotel, what we're actually doing is this radio show. So this is what we're doing instead. So I want to go back a little bit to the evolution of the programs at Britepaths, formerly Our Daily Bread Fairfax, to talk about how we went from doing some very basic sorts of services to having branched out to things like our Financial Empowerment Center. 35 years is a long time to be serving the greater Fairfax County region. And I think it would be helpful for our listeners to understand, you know, the services that we have and the services that have evolved and how they can get involved.
Mm-hmm, sure. So we talk about our programs in three categories. We stabilize families, we build resilience in families, and then we have supports for children. And so since the beginning, we have provided safety net services, food assistance, financial assistance, and
how do people access those services?
So through referrals through either Fairfax County Coordinated Services Planning, which is a call-in center staffed by social workers that will hear the story of someone in the community that's in crisis and make a referral to any number of nonprofits. And then we also get referrals from Fairfax County Public Schools social workers.
Right.
And we also get referrals from other nonprofits.
Right.
And so it's food assistance and financial assistance. Food assistance, in the kind of food assistance that Britepaths offers is for people that are in a temporary crisis. So we offer once a month food deliveries for 3 to 4 months. That equates to about a $1,600 value, and for that family that can use that savings to pay off other bills.
So let me just pause here for a second and talk about the fact that when we originally it was Our Daily Bread, and we had faith communities who both, helped with food drives and food donations and also the deliveries. And then I can remember when I first came on the board, I thought that there were many reasons to switch to grocery gift cards. Many reasons. Right. Because, as good-hearted as people are in their food drives, they were delivering things to people's homes that were not necessarily what anyone eats.
Right.
And, and never mind things like special dietary needs. If your child is lactose intolerant or allergic
need low sodium, low sugar.
Right. And so, we really did pivot and decide that. And it also, to me, made sense to switch to grocery gift cards because we're teaching people how to budget. We're teaching people how to manage what little money they have. So why are we bringing them food instead of saying, here's a $50 gift card and let's talk about the best way to spend this to feed your family in a healthy and nutritious way.
Right. You're absolutely right. But I do want to say that we still accept food donations.
Absolutely.
But
I know that we do
if
that.
People would kindly go on to our website, which is britepaths.org, to look at our most urgent needs. And that's a way to, and if anybody wanted to do a food drive or even a gift card drive, that's a great way for people to have a community service project and help us fill our pantry.
But a lot of times I think when people think about food pantries, they have this idea in their head. And then food drives are important, and the essential needs item drives are very important too, because a lot of things that are not covered by SNAP,
so we collect toiletries and household cleaning supplies and paper towels and
things like that.
Things like that's not covered, and but are essential. Laundry detergent
is essential.
And and toothpaste.
Right.
That kind of thing is really important to be able to offer up to people.
And this is the reality. I think a lot of people don't necessarily really sit with what families actually need.
Yeah. So another one of our programs that sort of evolved when we saw a gap in the services that we were offering. We offer non-perishable items. And we wanted people to be able to have fresh fruits and vegetables. And so the gift cards is one way. But during the summertime, we came up with this idea of partnering with other vendors at the farmers markets to offer our clients vouchers, $10 vouchers that they could go to one of our partnering vendors in the farmers market and redeem that voucher for $10 worth of produce. And clients love it. I mean, people love it. The food at the farmers market is a little bit more expensive. And so it is a way for them to take advantage of not only just fruits and vegetables, but, be able to buy them not in a grocery store, but, that handpicked that day maybe.
Yeah, very
And,
fresh, very
right.
different from other kinds of produce. Talk a little bit about, so that evolved. So the veggie vouchers evolved from this idea that it wasn't just feeding people anything. It was really thinking about how we're meeting their nutrition and wellness goals too.
Right. And one of the things that we talk about on the website is the fact that we want donations that are really healthy foods. It's just important that the food that we're offering to people doesn't have a lot of sugar in it,
or a lot of salt, or is over processed.
Right.
Which a lot of shelf-stable food tends to be, and ergo, that's why the veggie vouchers were so important.
Right.
With the food packs at the schools, this is another program a lot of people may not be aware that we do, and it has also grown because so many schools serve students who are food insecure, their families are.
Right. And so we had a social worker who was a donor of ours, Jean Wyman, and she is a social worker at Marshall Road School, and she came to us with this idea of these weekend food packs. So she has heard from the teachers in the school that kids were coming to school on Monday morning and they were hungry, and they'd been hungry all weekend because they would get, during the week, they would get the free and reduced lunches and breakfasts. And what could we do about that? And so we decided to, form this program called Food for Thought. We're now doing 16 schools and serving upwards of 750 students every year. And it's a fantastic program. And, during the summertime, we have some schools that will even continue to offer those
lunches,
food donations during the summer.
Yeah, because the school system has taken over actually serving lunch at different locations in the summertime for kids who really rely on the school for their basic meals.
Right. And I think it's a great partnership with the schools, and so our model is different than some of the other models out there for doing this, because what we try to do is go into a school that has a strong PTA or administration that will help to, we help them establish it, but then it sort of becomes self-sustaining.
Right.
They do food drives within their school, so there's, we help to supplement, and we provide a way for people, parents at the school that want to donate cash to purchase items. They'll funnel that through Britepaths, and we send gift cards that we give out to the school. And so people can make donations through our website and designate it to a specific school, and it'll just be a pass-through.
I think that's great. So for those who are just joining us, this is Making Change Radio here on Radio Fairfax. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining me tonight is the Executive Director of Britepaths, Lisa Whetzel. So I want to talk a little bit, besides food, some of the other programs, the emergency assistance, because we also are in the business of preventing homelessness.
Mm-hmm. Right. So financial assistance, we offer assistance for utilities and rent, and recently, within the past 3 or 4 years, we've now offered car repair. We're one of the very few nonprofits that offers financial assistance for car repair. And we have about 12 different auto body shops that have partnered with us that will provide a discount even on top of the assistance that we're providing with the client. And the client will have to put money towards it as well. Usually it's half and half. And the way that people come to us is through Fairfax County Coordinated Services Planning. They'll make the referral for us.
And car repair, if you look at the things that really send people into an unexpected downward spiral, the illness of a family member, or the car breaking down.
Right. And in this area, car is just so
the only way to
essential.
get there. And so if you can't get to your job, then a lot of these people are hourly, and some of them work more than one job.
Mm-hmm.
So if your
or
car
dropping off kids.
Yeah. And so this becomes a much bigger thing than many of our listeners may realize, that a car repair can really be the beginning of a very serious downward spiral financially.
I mean, so, our public transportation system in the county is great to an extent. A lot of roads lead right to a metro stop. But if you are living in the outer suburbs or whatever, there's
like Centerville, which has a transportation desert out there.
It'll take you 2 hours to get to Herndon from Centerville if you take it by bus,
right? Because
you got to go in and then you got to go out. So car repair is essential.
It really is. And so, once we have basically kept people in their homes, made sure they have enough to eat, that their kids have enough to eat, then we start to really look at
building resilience.
Yes, and that is a really key piece of getting people on the right track and keeping them there.
Right. So we have a whole host of programs because we're in financial literacy, because we really want to try to meet people where they are. So we offer classes that are delivered in other nonprofit locations. They assemble a class, and we have one that's offered once a month. It's called Thrifty Thursdays. It's at 3 different locations. It rotates, and on our website you can find out what those locations are. And then we offer financial counseling clinics. So anybody of any income can come in and get 1 hour of financial advice from a financial advisor, and walk out with a 3-point action plan that'll help you address whatever crisis you're in. They're not going to solve the problem for you right then and there, but they can point you in the right direction. And then, and so we offer those counseling clinics. One's in Chantilly and one's in Alexandria. And we partner with 2 other nonprofits to do that. We locate the financial counseling clinic within United Community in Alexandria, and then the other one is located in Chantilly at Western Fairfax Christian Ministries. So we have great partnerships with nonprofits, and I actually really value that, because, Britepaths can't do everything. We can't solve all the problems. We've got to work together.
And we can't reach all the people.
Right.
I mean, in order to, so financial literacy counseling in the classes and our model and the curriculum is more easily delivered when other people have assembled the people who need it.
Right, because, while we have the classes that are open to the public, those aren't as well attended. It's just not a very exciting topic, to be honest. And also there's a lot of shame that's involved with people that are struggling financially, because, they perceive that their crisis is due to their bad decisions, which is not always the case. I mean, of course, sometimes it is, but sometimes people just don't know what the right decision is to make. And so we try to help them to make those better decisions. And so we have the financial counseling clinics, and as we were talking earlier, we launched the Financial Empowerment Center back in 2017 through a partnership with Fairfax County and the United Way of the National Capital Area. And what we were really thrilled about to be able to administer this program is that we now had a place for Monday through Friday for walk-ins. People could, come without an appointment and talk to a financial advisor and get some financial coaching. And the whole model is, at least in our center, we are really hoping that people have that come back repeated times.
Right.
Because the more touches that we have with folks, the more they are likely to make new habits and explore new opportunities to learn new things about, maybe how to buy a car, or how to buy a car better, than they did before, or how to be savvy about looking for lower paying apartment, those kinds of things, and understanding what your credit history and your credit report means. So everybody that comes through the financial counseling clinics or at the Financial Empowerment Center, we run a credit report through annualcredit.com. I think that's the name. And then we sit down with them and we review it. And that can be very eye-opening for folks. And if they need to dispute something, we can give them guidance on how to do that. It's very intimidating to look at all of that information. And sitting down with someone who knows what they're looking at and giving you credible advice is it feels safe, and it empowers you to make better decisions.
Yeah, most of us were not taught this in school. Those of us of a certain age, they now include financial literacy in the curriculum.
In Fairfax County Public Schools.
In Fairfax County, and I believe that in the entire Commonwealth. I think legislation was passed at some point that said financial literacy has to be taught as part of the curriculum of every graduating student who's getting a standard diploma, I believe. Mm-hmm. It's statewide. So younger people are getting some of the benefit of that, but people my age were never taught that. Many of us figured it out by making bad mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is the financial mentoring program that we have. We have an 80% success rate of people that go through that program. And so what we do is we have a volunteer who's matched with a client who is willing to take a really deep dive, and they meet and set goals, and over the course of 6 months, they meet twice a month over 6 months, working towards those goals. And, having someone that can help you to take steps towards long-term goals is very empowering. It also is emotional support and accountability to stay on track. It's credible advice and coaching, and we also identify community resources that might benefit them. So it is one of the most impactful programs that we offer.
And you're right about this too, is that we vet people who are good matches, because in order to have an 80% success rate, you've got to identify people who are most likely to show up, stay with the program, and work the plan.
Right.
And that's not everybody.
Right. And, and it does happen where a client says, yes, I'm ready to go. And, they get in it and they just are not. They're not focused, and they need to take a step back. But they might come back later.
And there's that opportunity to come back later as well.
Right.
So there's lots of great success stories, and really you're doing this one person, one family, one hurdle at a time. And so we have videos, where people have talked about with their mentor, and I think some of those are on the website.
Oh, yeah. We've got a lot of stories that are on the website. But some of the other programs that we have is the Empower Loans.
Oh, I thought, that was and I remember the evolution of that.
Yeah.
And the concept of it. Explain the concept of the Empower Loan.
So everybody's probably familiar with what a payday loan is. So when someone needs fast cash, they go to a payday loan. And what we're trying to do is help people avoid doing that. And we do that by, for those clients that have been through the financial mentoring program or been to classes, they will apply for, it's usually about $1,000, and they can use that money towards a security deposit for an apartment, or maybe a down payment on a car, or what have you. It's or certification training. And over the course of the year, they pay it back. And it's just an alternate, and it's zero interest loan. And this idea originated through one of our financial mentors, and said that, why can't we have this kind of program? So we went to the finance committee with the board and, looked at all of the options, and decided to have, we collected money from, it's sort of like seed money from a lot of our donors, financial mentors, and some of our board members. And we have this pool that we can give out and it's been 100% repayment plan for the 7 clients that have gone through it so far.
And so let's just like put an exclamation point behind that.
Yeah,
7
awesome.
Empower loans to 7 people, and they were repaid 100%.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this to me reminds me so much of Muhammad Yunus when he started the Grameen Bank and started giving microloans to, and it turned out that women were the best people to give a loan to because the repayment rate was so high. I mean, they paid it back.
Mm-hmm.
And so people need to understand that sometimes it takes a little bit of faith in identifying people that have the skills and the commitment to understand what they're committing to in order for this to be successful. For those of you who are just joining us, this is Making Change Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and we are talking with Lisa Whetzel, who's the executive director of Britepaths. And when it comes to making change, Britepaths in the last 35 years has made an enormous impact. Tell us, what you plan for the future. Workforce development, I know, is a big one. That is a new thing for Britepaths.
Right.
Where are you? Where are you going with that?
Yeah, so for workforce development, we've got 2 people on staff that are helping to provide coaching in that area, and we also have a program that is called Network Up, and this is a really exciting program. What we do is we match up someone who has, who's job ready, got a job usually already, and has a resume, but they just can't break into that higher paying job that might be in management or something, and they also don't have the social capital. And to get that, 80% of jobs are gotten through networking.
Somebody you know.
Yeah, and so if you have grown up in a neighborhood where, everyone around you has jobs in retail or
low-paying service jobs.
Low-paying service jobs. Yep. And you want to get yourself ahead, you don't have that the kind of parents and uncles and people that you can tap to help you say, hey, can you introduce me to your network? So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to eliminate that barrier. And so we match up a client who is interested in a specific field. We match them up with a professional in that field. That professional will meet with them 3 or 4 times and introduce them to that professional's network, and float around their resume, and also review their resume and point out like where are the holes. If you want to get this job, you need this certification. That kind of thing.
So I'm going to put in a plug for LinkedIn, only because I believe in LinkedIn, number one, but because just the other day, like within the last several days, the CEO of LinkedIn has talked about how they are pivoting from their early admonition that you should only connect with people you know to say that people need to connect with people who need help tapping into a professional network. It's exactly what you just talked about. But LinkedIn itself has said everybody needs to help somebody else who does not have a professional network. So they're actually saying go out and adopt somebody
who
awesome. Needs entree. So yeah. LinkedIn itself has said we recognize the only way to close the inequality gap, and at the base of everything is this enormous inequality in our communities, in our country, in Northern Virginia. So LinkedIn is like, find somebody and connect them to your network. So you were there first. I just want to say that.
Well, actually, so the program started with a program that we modeled after 3 Cups of Coffee. And we've decided to take a little bit of spin on that and broaden it. So we renamed it and sort of created our own program.
Right. And so that makes a difference. So everything that you're talking about, from food insecurity to managing a financial crisis to financial mentorship to empowerment loans to workforce development, it's a trajectory. I mean, and then basically I see Britepaths, as we move forward in the future, looking for the opportunities to find other ways to support people in their journey, where they need to go to be self-sufficient over the long term.
Right. And so Britepaths wants to be nimble and address the gaps in services in the county. And we've got lots of different ways that on the horizon, and so stay tuned.
True. And people need to volunteer. And
Right.
being a volunteer is one of the best ways to support this effort, because without our hundreds, thousands of volunteers, we'd be unable to provide this level of individual mentorship.
Absolutely. And you can find out how to be a volunteer by going to our website, britepaths.org, and looking up volunteers.
Oh, Britepaths. BRITE. Paths. We misspelled it on purpose, so just so you know, not to look for it spelled the right way. It's BRITEPATHS.org. Thank you so much for being here, Lisa.
Thank
This
you.
has been illuminating. Of course, I love Britepaths because I've been with the organization 8 years, but I hope our listeners are plugged in as well. Figure out how you can support efforts that truly make change.